Republicans flooded to the courtroom just to disregard evidence of Donald Trump's criminal conspiracy. Among them was North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum. Burgum claimed he was in the court solely as a volunteer to support Trump. Could this imply that he had to pay part of his damage control team to sit behind him in court? After hearing Burgum's statements, it appears he would have been more beneficial if he remained in North Dakota. It seemed evident that he entered the courtroom either with earplugs or without any intentions of confronting the truth about the man he aspires to be a running mate of.
That at its best, in the world where I came from, business, this would have been a non-material classification error. At best, it might have been, tried at a misdemeanor, but even still today, there's been no real connection to a crime that's happened. And without a crime, there's no felonies and there's no wrongdoing. And so without that, people just have to say, hey, this seems very, very political. And if this really mattered, why are they bringing this case now versus not 7 years ago when these payments were made?
I'm glad that you cited your history, because you do have a long history in the world of business. And that was a big credential when you ran in this Republican race. I mean, at the heart of this is falsifying business records. And I assume that you do not agree that falsifying business records is okay, that is illegal. Do you acknowledge that?
Well, I acknowledge that non-disclosure agreements, which are at the heart of this thing, they're common and they're legal. And what's at dispute is if you're paying legal expenses and you call them legal expenses, is that a misclassification? So even that's at a dispute right now. And if it were, if this was to somebody other than Donald Trump, this case would have never been brought, because a misclassification like that has no harm to any citizen in New York, at best, like I said, would have been a misdemeanor, and at worst would have been never charged. So just seems amazing to me that somehow they've been able to transform this with magic into 34 felonies. I've never seen that in my business career.
Doug Burgum selectively acknowledged information that suits his narrative while ignoring the substantial evidence of Donald Trump's misconduct. He stands behind the false notion of a witch hunt, suggesting that the case against Trump wouldn't exist if it weren't for him, claiming his actions harmed no New Yorkers. The reality is far from a clerical error. Trump deliberately concealed illicit interference in the 2016 presidential campaign. This deceitful, calculated move not only deceived every New Yorker, but also insulted the integrity of every American citizen. Any seasoned business person knows the severity of falsifying business records and making fraudulent entries. Michael Cohen's testimony revealed Trump's direct involvement in orchestrating hush money payments and subsequent cover-ups. However, Burgum skirts around these damning revelations when confronted with Cohen's explosive testimonies.
Well, Michael Cohen testified that these were false business records, that he wasn't paid any retainer because he wasn't doing any legal services. So there was nothing for him to be paid for. He said it was just reimbursement for hush money that he paid to a porn star, which he said he did so to protect Donald Trump's chances of winning the 2016 election, Governor. That's really what's at the heart of this. I think in all, after being in that room today and the jury was seated there to your right, don't you believe this case should be left up to those 12 jurors inside the room to decide whether or not Donald Trump is guilty or not guilty?
Well, it will be left up to those 12 jurors, but I think you could ask the American public if Joe Biden was on trial in the reddest county in America, had a gag order and couldn't talk about it, had a judge that had donated to President Trump, and had prosecutors that were all Republicans and were fans and supporters of President Trump, I think, the media that's lined up along the street out here would be like, wow, it's going to be very tough for Joe Biden to get a fair trial in that very red county, where when you do jury selection in a county that's 92% blue like Manhattan is, you have to ask a question. But it'll be, I'm sure, however this turns out, people will appeal, the lawfare will continue, and the American public will suffer, because this is at the end, at the heart of this whole thing is about politics. It's not actually about a meaty legal decision that affected Americans.
Once again, this impacted every American. Trump knew that if details about his alleged affairs were exposed, he would have had to bow out of the 2016 election. Cohen testified that Trump instructed to prolong the Stormy Daniels situation as much as possible, preferably until after the election. He said Trump told him that women would turn against him if the news came out. Clearly, Trump was aware that his actions were unethical. Even the Republicans supporting him recognized this fact. There is no plausible way Burgum truly believes his own statements. Did Burgum doze off during the trial like Trump? Because he continues to characterize Cohen's reimbursements as legitimate expenses. It is perplexing how he can sleep soundly at night knowing that siding with Donald Trump entails deceiving the public and deceiving himself.
You're describing this all as political. And of course, we've seen instances where judges that Trump appointed are overseeing his cases, and we have not seen complaints from Trump's team then. So I think that table could turn both ways. But, Governor, at the heart of this, it is the falsification of business records. And I just want to ask you one more time. Do you agree that that's not legal, that it's not just a paperwork issue or a misclassification issue, that falsifying business records is indeed illegal?
Well, I don't think that's been proven yet, and there hasn't really been clearly identified what the crime is because, as you saw this morning, Caitlin, these are called legal expenses, and they were paid to his attorney. And so I think they're going to have to prove, and they paid that attorney $420,000, and he paid $130,000 out the other end for a legal, commonplace non-disclosure agreement. I think we'll find out in cross-examination what happened to the dollars in between that today, but. So it's not, you're making an assertion that hasn't even been proven yet in this trial.
Well, Michael Cohen testified to it. We'll see what happens here as cross-examination. Trump's attorneys are now up.
Standing behind Donald Trump means standing against America. Republicans should not feel obligated to be loyal to Trump simply because he belongs to their party. If they have the best interests of this country at heart, they will stand up for what is right, stop indulging in Donald Trump's lies and fraud, and demand that he be held accountable for his actions. This is a moment for Republicans to consider their ethical responsibilities and make the moral choice.